The crossing line. The sky over Proxima Centauri's fourth planet burned with the cold fire of nuclear engines as the UNSS Mercy fled through the system. Behind it, the sleek predatory forms of the Sci-Fi pursuit vessels cut through space like obsidian knives. Captain Elena Reyes gripped the command console of the medical frigate, watching the tactical display with growing dread. "Status on the evacuation pods," she demanded. Lieutenant Kodo wiped sweat from his brow. 78% deployed, Captain. 4 minutes until the last patients are away." "We don't have 4 minutes," Reyes muttered, watching the distance between them and the Sci-Fi vessels shrink inexorably. The UNSS Mercy wasn't built for combat. It wasn't built for speed. It was a floating hospital, wrapped in the white and red markings that had signified medical neutrality since humanity's earliest wars. Markings that were supposed to mean something. "Captain," Communications Officer Park's voice cracked. "I'm still broadcasting our status on all frequencies. They're receiving it. They're not responding." Reyes nodded grimly. The Sci-Fi understood perfectly well what they were attacking. That was the point. The ship shuddered as the first long-range shots grazed their shields. In the medbay 3 decks below, Dr. Maya Chen steadied herself against a surgical table, looking up at the ceiling as if she could see through the bulkheads to the enemy ships closing in. "Keep moving," she shouted to her medical team. "Get the critical patients to the evacuation pods first." The medical frigate had been returning from the front lines, packed with wounded from the Battle of Ta City. Over 800 injured soldiers, civilians, and even a few captured Sci-Fi who had been treated with the same care as human patients. Maya had personally performed surgery on 3 of them. Another impact, harder this time. The lights flickered, and emergency klaxons began to wail. "Damage to decks 5 through 8, announced the ship's AI in its perpetually calm voice. "Hull breach imminent. All personnel evacuate to emergency stations." Maya helped a nurse guide a hover gurney with an unconscious patient toward the escape pod bays. "What about the patients in cryostasis?" she asked. Chief Medical Officer Alvarez appeared at her side, his face ashen. "We're moving as many as we can, but we'll lose some. We have to accept that." Maya hadn't joined the United Nations Space Service Medical Corps to accept losing patients, but she also knew the brutal calculus of triage. Save who you can. On the bridge, Captain Reyes received the report she'd been dreading. "Direct hit to engineering. FTL drive is offline. Sublight engines at 18%. She closed her eyes for a moment, then opened them with new resolve. "Rotate the ship. Position us between the Sci-Fi and the evacuation pods. We'll buy them as much time as we can." In the 3 years since first contact with the Sci-Fi collective, humanity had struggled to understand their new interstellar neighbors. The xenopsychologists said the Sci-Fi operated on fundamentally different moral principles. Their society was built around concepts of efficiency and collective progress rather than individual rights. But even accounting for that, their decision to target medical ships made little sense, until you considered the tactical advantage. The UNSS had the most advanced medical technology in known space. Their recovery rates from battlefield injuries were unmatched. By targeting the medical corps, the Sci-Fi weren't just killing the wounded, they were ensuring future casualties would stay dead. It was ruthlessly logical, and it crossed a line that humans had respected even in their darkest hours of conflict with each other. Maya reached the evacuation bay just as another blast rocked the ship. A support beam crashed down, nearly crushing a group of patients. She felt something warm running down her face and realized she was bleeding from a gash on her forehead. "Dr. Chen." A medic grabbed her arm. "This way. This pod is ready to launch." The patients. Almost all away. "This is the last group of medical personnel." Captain's orders. Maya allowed herself to be guided into the cramped evacuation pod. As the doors sealed shut, she caught a final glimpse of the UNSS Mercy, her home for the past 2 years. Through the viewport, The massive medical frigate had positioned itself like a shield between the escape pods and the Sci-Fi vessels. Its once pristine white hull was now scorched and broken in dozens of places. Even as she watched, another barrage struck the engine section, sending a silent bloom of fire into space. The pod's engines ignited, pushing them away from the dying ship. Maya closed her eyes, unable to watch anymore. 3 days later, the full scale of the atrocity became clear. The UNSS Mercy hadn't been the only target. Throughout human space, medical ships and facilities had been hit simultaneously. The Sci-Fi had made a strategic decision to cripple humanity's ability to heal its wounded. Maya sat in a debriefing room aboard the UNS Intrepid, a military carrier that had picked up her evacuation pod, and dozens of others. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. Admiral Hassan paced at the front of the room, his face a mask of controlled fury. The final casualty count stands at 4,213 medical personnel and patients, 3 hospital ships destroyed, 7 medical stations on the frontier colonies bombed despite being clearly marked as non-military targets. He stopped pacing and faced the room of survivors and military officers. The Sci-Fi Collective has formally notified Earth government that under their interpretation of interstellar conflict protocols, medical facilities provide asymmetric advantage to human forces and are therefore legitimate military targets. A murmur of outrage rippled through the room. "What's our response, sir?" asked a colonel in the front row. Admiral Hassan's expression hardened. As of 600 this morning, the Security Council has authorized Operation Hypocrates' Vengeance. He activated a holographic display showing a detailed schematic of what appeared to be a Sci-Fi installation. Intelligence has identified the Sci-Fi High Command facility, where the order to target medical ships originated. It's located on their homeworld, Sci-Fi Prime, in the heavily fortified Kettle region. Maya stared at the hologram in disbelief. They were planning to strike the Sci-Fi homeworld. It seemed impossible, suicidal even. The Admiral continued, "This will not be a conventional military operation. The Sci-Fi expect us to respond with equivalent attacks on their medical infrastructure. We will not. Humanity is better than that." He paused, his gaze sweeping across the room until it landed on Maya. "Instead, we're assembling a team of combat-trained medical personnel for a surgical strike. The objective is singular. Eliminate the specific Sci-Fi commanders who authorized the attacks on our medical facilities." "Sir," Maya found herself speaking before she'd consciously decided to, "I'm a doctor. We take an oath to do no harm." Admiral Hassan nodded. "Yes, Dr. Chen, you do. And normally, we would never ask medical personnel to violate that oath. But these are not normal circumstances. The Sci-Fi have calculated that our ethical constraints will prevent an effective response. They believe we will either do nothing or respond in kind, both of which they factored into their strategic planning." He stepped closer to her. "What they don't understand is that there's something far more dangerous than an enemy with no ethics, and that's an enemy whose ethics have been pushed to the breaking point." Maya thought about her colleagues who died aboard the Mercy, about patients who never had a chance, about Captain Reyes, who'd gone down with her ship to save as many lives as possible. "When do we start training?" she asked quietly. Admiral Hassan's severe expression softened just slightly. "I thought you might say that. Briefing starts in 1 hour." As Maya left the room, she caught a glimpse of herself in a reflective panel. The woman looking back at her was different from the doctor who had boarded the UNSS Mercy 3 years ago. That woman believed in the sanctity of all life and the fundamental decency of intelligent beings. This woman still believed in the sanctity of life, but she now understood that sometimes protecting that sanctity required terrible choices. The Sci-Fi had calculated wrong. They had assumed humans would be constrained by their ethics of care. What they failed to realize was that those very ethics, when violated, would transform healers into the most dedicated, precise, and motivated warriors the galaxy had ever seen. And they were about to learn that lesson the hard way. Surgical strike. The Sci-Fi never expected us to retaliate this way, Colonel Winters explained, her voice steady as she addressed the 20 volunteers assembled in the briefing room of the stealth transport Nightshade. Their strategic calculations assumed we'd either attack their medical facilities in kind or launch a conventional military response. Maya Chen sat in the front row, trying to reconcile the last month of intensive combat training with her years of medical education. Beside her sat other medical professionals, surgeons, nurses, medics, all of whom had lost colleagues in the Sci-Fi attacks, all of whom had volunteered for this mission. What they don't understand, Winters continued, is that human ethics aren't a weakness to be exploited. They're a dam. And they've just broken it. The holographic display in the center of the room showed their target, the Central Command Spire in Ketal, the military heart of the Sci-Fi homeworld. Intelligence suggested that Supreme Commander Vasix and the 5 members of the Strategic Directorate, who had authorized the attacks on human medical ships, would be gathered there for their victory celebration. Our intelligence comes from an unexpected source. Winters nodded to a figure at the back of the room. A Sci-Fi stepped forward, their chitinous exoskeleton gleaming dully under the lights. Murmurs rippled through the assembled team. Maya recognized the Sci-Fi. It was one of the wounded she had treated aboard the Mercy before the attack. One of the few who had made it to an escape pod. This is Kivex, Winters explained, a medical researcher who defected after witnessing how we treated their wounded. Apparently, the concept of treating enemy casualties with the same priority as your own was revolutionary to them. Kivex's multifaceted eyes scanned the room. Your ethical frameworks confused our strategists, the Sci-Fi said, voice clicking through the translator. They saw your care for enemies as inefficient. They did not understand it was the source of your strength. The alien gestured to the holographic plans. I will guide you through the security systems. I ask only that you remember, not all Sci-Fi agree with the Strategic Directorate's decision. Many of us were horrified. Maya studied the alien. She'd spent hours reconstructing this being's shattered limb, never questioning whether an enemy deserved her care. Now that same being was risking everything to help them. Colonel Winters resumed the briefing. We'll deploy in 5 teams. Each team has a primary target. This is not a revenge mission. This is surgery. We remove the cancer without harming the surrounding tissue. She fixed them with a stern look. Civilian casualties are unacceptable. Medical personnel not involved in the decision to target our hospitals are not to be harmed. We are going to show the Sci-Fi what human ethics really mean, not by abandoning them, but by applying them with precision. The Nightshade slipped through Sci-Fi space, using experimental stealth technology. The ship itself was a marvel of engineering, designed to evade the sophisticated sensor networks that protected the Sci-Fi homeworld. But the truly remarkable technology was what the team carried with them. These are MEDTAC suits, the quartermaster explained as Maya was fitted into her combat system. Medical tactical response armor. Designed for combat medics, but modified for our purposes. The suit felt like a second skin, enhancing her strength and speed, while maintaining dexterity fine enough for microsurgery. Built into the forearm was a complete medical diagnostic system. But for this mission, those systems have been supplemented with weapons. The targeting system links directly to your visual cortex, the tech continued. Think of it as an extension of the precision you use in surgery. The same neural pathways that let you make an incision within a millimeter will now let you neutralize a target with similar precision. Maya flexed her hand, watching the responsive armor move like living tissue. How many of these exist? 20. All prototypes. All in this room. The infiltration of Ketal began exactly as planned. The 5 teams deployed from high atmosphere, their descent masked by a meteor shower that happened to coincide with their arrival. A coincidence that Colonel Winters had called the universe having a sense of justice. Maya's team included 2 combat nurses and a trauma surgeon. They moved through the outskirts of the Sci-Fi capital like ghosts, the adaptive camouflage of their MEDTAC suits rendering them nearly invisible. Remember your training. Maya whispered over the comm as they approached the central command spire. We're doctors first. Every action must be necessary and precise. Contact, reported Jensen, one of the nurses. Security patrol, 12 o'clock. Maya watched through her enhanced vision as a group of Sci-Fi guards moved along their planned route. These weren't their targets. These were just soldiers doing their duty, no different from humans guarding an Earth facility. Hold position, she ordered. Let them pass. They waited in perfect stillness as the patrol moved by, close enough that Maya could have reached out and touched them. One guard paused, sensory appendages twitching as if detecting something amiss, but after a moment, they moved on. Path clear, Jensen reported. The team proceeded toward their entry point, a maintenance shaft that Kivex had identified. According to their intelligence, their target, Sub-Commander Nalax, would be in the Strategic Planning Center on Level 47. Nalax had been the one to identify medical ships as priority targets, arguing that eliminating human medical capacity would shorten the war by at least 2 years. As they ascended through the building's internal systems, Maya thought about the oath she had taken as a doctor. First, do no harm. How many times had she repeated those words to herself? But there was another part of the oath that felt equally important now. I will prevent disease whenever I can, for prevention is preferable to cure. What they were doing was preventative medicine on a galactic scale. We've reached level 47, reported Dr. Katsaros, the trauma surgeon. Security systems bypassed as per Kivex's instructions. Maya nodded. Proceed to target location. Non-lethal restraint for any non-targets. The Strategic Planning Center was a vast chamber filled with holographic displays, showing the progress of the Sci-Fi campaign against human space. Maya's enhanced vision immediately identified Sub-Commander Nalax, standing before a large tactical display showing the debris field where the UNSS Mercy had been destroyed. The Sci-Fi was using the destruction of the medical ship as a teaching moment for junior officers, pointing out the strategic efficiency of targeting human medical capacity. Maya felt a cold rage, but channeled it into focus. They moved silently into position, deploying neural disruptors that incapacitated the junior officers without permanent harm. Nalax turned at the commotion, multifaceted eyes widening in what Maya recognized as the Sci-Fi expression of shock. Impossible, the alien commander clicked. No human vessel could reach Sci-Fi's prime undetected. Maya stepped forward, her MEDTAC helmet retracting to reveal her face. Do you recognize me, Sub-Commander? Nalax's sensory appendages twitched. You are human medical personnel. You should not be here. You should not be capable of this. My name is Dr. Maya Chen. I served aboard the UNSS Mercy. The ship you're so proudly displaying is destroyed. Understanding seemed to dawn on the Sci-Fi. You were not neutralized. No, but many of my colleagues were. Many of my patients were. People under my care who I had sworn to protect. Nalax backed away. This is warfare. Strategic necessities. Save it. Maya cut him off. We've accessed your communications. We know you personally identified medical vessels as priority targets. We know you argued against those in your command who said it violated interspecies conflict protocols. The Sci-Fi's posture changed, becoming more aggressive. What do you intend? Torture. Revenge. Humans claim ethical superiority, yet here you are, infiltrating our homeworld on an assassination mission. Maya shook her head. Not assassination. Justice and education. She raised her arm, a small device extending from her suit. This contains a modified neural disruptor. It won't kill you. Instead, it will rewrite your neural pathways in one specific way. It will give you empathy. Nalax recoiled in horror. You cannot. That violates. It will allow you to feel what others feel, to understand pain and suffering not as abstract concepts, but as lived experiences. Maya's voice was clinical now, detached. You'll feel the deaths of everyone aboard the Mercy. You'll understand exactly what your strategic necessity cost. This is worse than death. Nalax hissed. No, Maya corrected. This is medicine. I'm curing you of a condition that leads you to cause harm to others. I'm fulfilling my oath. Across the Sigari command center, similar scenes were playing out. Not a single shot had been fired. Not a single life had been taken. But the Sci-Fi Strategic Directorate was being systematically treated. 3 hours later, the human teams extracted as silently as they had arrived, leaving behind a transformed Sci-Fi leadership, one now neurologically incapable of separating their decisions from the consequences those decisions had on others. On the journey back to human space, Maya sat alone in her quarters, staring at her reflection. The woman who looked back at her was neither the idealistic doctor who had joined the medical corps, nor the vengeful survivor of the Mercy's destruction. She was something new. Someone who understood that healing sometimes required intervention at the source of the disease. Someone who recognized that mercy could take unexpected forms. Admiral Hassan was waiting when the Nightshade docked at the hidden base in the Kuiper Belt. Mission successful? He asked simply. Maya nodded. All targets treated. No casualties on either side. The Admiral studied her face. And how are you, Doctor? Processing, she answered honestly. What we did, it wasn't in any medical textbook I've ever read. No, Hassan agreed. But perhaps it should be. The Sci-Fi have already issued a formal cessation of attacks on medical facilities. More than that, they'd proposed new interspecies protocols specifically protecting medical neutrality. Maya raised an eyebrow. That was fast. Apparently, their leadership has had a sudden change of heart regarding the value of medical ethics. There was the ghost of a smile on the Admiral's face. Sometimes the most effective treatment is the one that makes further treatment unnecessary. 2 weeks later, Maya stood before a gathering of medical personnel from across human space. The memorial service for those lost in the Sci-Fi attacks was being held on Earth, in the ancient city of Geneva, where the first conventions protecting medical personnel in warfare had been signed centuries before. As she placed a white flower at the base of the monument, Maya thought about what they had accomplished. The Sci-Fi would never again target those who sought only to heal, not because they feared retaliation, but because they now understood why it was wrong. It wasn't revenge, it was preventative medicine on a galactic scale. And sometimes, prevention was the highest form of healing. The 20 members of Operation Hypocrates' vengeance were never publicly acknowledged. Their mission remained classified. But throughout human space, a new understanding emerged, that humanity's ethical frameworks weren't constraints to be exploited, but foundations upon which their greatest strengths were built. And across the stars, other species took note that when it came to protecting their healers, humans would go to extraordinary lengths. Not with overwhelming force or indiscriminate destruction, but with the surgical precision that came from millennia of learning how to heal, and when necessary, how to fight for the right to do so.